So we know when we see a rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, a lot of times it's followed up by violence. And unfortunately, there was an incident, there was a shooting in Vermont, in Burlington, Vermont, where 3 Palestinians were shot. By the accounts, it was, for what we know right now, it was that somebody saw them, they were wearing keffiyehs, they were speaking Arabic, and that might have been the motive or the emphasis for the shooting. A Vermont man was shot. And I don't know if this is because Burlington, Vermont is seen as a very liberal place. I don't know. I thought the police chief's comments were actually, for a police chief, were pretty good. The fact that he was hey, something like this in this environment, we have to look at it as a hate crime. We have to, because if you try to say that same old, we're just going to investigate it. So a man was arrested. Jason J. Eaton was arrested. So far, he has pleaded not guilty. And right now, we don't, a full motive as to why he did this hasn't come out yet or hasn't been revealed. Just starting with you, Miracle, what, I guess, first, just what was your, when you hear this happening, what are your thoughts upon, seeing this rhetoric now turn to, again, unfortunately, turn to violence?
I don't think anyone was surprised that it happened when we talk about white supremacy becoming a reality of our everyday lives. We know there's always a violent component to white supremacy. What I think a lot of people found interesting was that the police chief was yeah, this is probably going to be a hate crime based on the fact that these men, they were just walking around the block and he came out, confronted and shot him. I think when the news tried to say, oh, he has mental health issues and he's just depressed, you saw so many people come out and say depression does not make people anti-Palestinian. This is based on the rhetoric that we're seeing from our presidents, from our leadership, from people who have failed to see Palestinian people as humans for the past month and a half.
Right.
And someone to even argue before then.
Right.
This is the result of that. You're always going to create situations of violence when you dehumanize people and create them and prop them up as the other. And that is why so many folks have been begging elected officials and college deans to actually show up and care for their students. And because they haven't, it creates these conditions where you see someone with a keffiyeh and you see them as a threat and you feel like you're justified in using the worst form of violence when approaching. And I will say that this is a wave of violence, talking about the 6-year-old who was stabbed in Illinois. That set it off. And there's even this idea to associate all Palestinians or all organizers with Hamas and saying that they all need to die. This is what happens. That when you don't educate yourselves, when your elected officials aren't educating their communities, you're creating this basically local domestic terrorism. And now everybody's trying to figure out what happened. And what happened is you didn't educate yourself, you didn't educate your community, and you created the same conditions of 9/11. And the only difference between now and 9/11 is that originally it was Sikhs who were getting abused right after 9/11 because people didn't understand that there are multiple religions that have turbans and garments where people cover their heads. And so the only thing different now is that Palestinian people are the targets and not other communities and cultures.
Wow. So just a couple of points to what you said. The chief said, and the chief's name is John Murad. He said, quote, whether or not it was a hate crime by law, there's no question it was a hateful act. Right. And again, that's a strong statement from a police chief, you know what I'm saying, to say that in the wake of this. And just touching on what Miracle said, it says the three young men, all 20, had been staying at the home of an uncle of one of them and had gone out for a walk around 6:30 p.m. Saturday. The police said that Mr. Eaton approached the 3 friends outside the apartment building where he lives and without speaking, pulled out a handgun and started shooting from about 2 yards away. And then also to touch on Miracle's point that, they interviewed his mother This is James Eaton's mother, and who basically said he had previously struggled with depression. And so a lot of the headlines, and this is also to me a function of white supremacy, how like, you know, a lot of times this is how white violence is explained away, especially in the wake of mass shootings and a lot of these politicians not wanting to do things like ban assault rifles. It's like, oh, they're depressed. Oh, it's a mental health thing. But then you also don't want to give resources and funds to support like mental health, real mental health work. So just, you know, you all thoughts on this incident, Farouk or Trouble, and how it's being, again, like almost like, you know, Eaton's like almost being whitewashed in the sense of, oh, he's depressed.
So this happened not even 10 years ago in North Carolina when a guy killed 3 Muslim students.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
Over a parking spot.
Yes.
I think it was Dia Barakat, and then I think his sister and his wife. And so this isn't, like Miracle said, like this isn't just something that's isolated. Like this is rhetoric based, and these are people who are targeted for a very specific reason. But it's not to say this is something new. You know, there's been, we talked about on the show, is a 216% rise in anti-Arab Islamic attacks in the States just in the past couple of weeks. But this doesn't erase everything that's been happening, like Miracle said, since 9/11. Like we talked about on the show before, like that guy who came and put like the bacon on the Muslim people's front door, and the people who are like sending pigs' heads to masjids in the States, and that happens a lot in New Zealand and Australia. Like this is regular. And I know, like for me, I used to wear keffiyeh a lot, and like when I would go to a specific masjid, I would have my keffiyeh every day, but I would have to walk through neighborhoods to get to this masjid. And I started thinking about like how unsafe that could potentially make you. You know what I mean? Like I could take care of myself, but I can't box a bullet.
True.
You know what I mean? There's nothing I could do from range. You know what I mean? Like in this specific instance, 6 feet away, and you start shooting at people because of what they dress. You can't do anything about that except for take the bullet. You know, so it's scary, man. These are scary times right now. And like Miracle said, man, this is something that was started over rhetoric and the inability to humanize people who are going through a crisis, who are being destroyed, you know, slaughtered en masse. And the White House is just basically like,
Yeah.